Hello, we're doing Chapter 4, Ethics and Social Responsibility. The learning objectives. Explain the relationship between ethics and the law, differentiate between the claims of the different stakeholder groups that are affected by managers and their company's actions, and describe 4 rules that can help companies and their managers act in ethical ways. Slide 2 of 2 in learning objectives, discuss why it is important for managers to behave ethically, identify the 4 main sources of managerial ethics, and distinguish among the 4 main approaches towards social responsibility that a company can take. Ethical dilemma, slide 1 of 2, the nature of ethics. This is the quandary people find themselves in when they decide if they should act in a way that may help one person or group, even though doing so might go against their own self-interest. Ethics, slide 2 of 2, is the inner guiding moral principles, values, and beliefs that people use to analyze or interpret a situation and then decide what is the right or appropriate way to behave. And ethical dilemmas happen every single day. Dealing with ethical issues. There are no absolute or indisputable rules or principles that can be developed to decide if an action is ethical or unethical. Now, from a religious standpoint, that would not be a truthful statement, but this is a secular course. We're not going to get involved with your personal religion, but whatever your personal religion is, it may not mesh well with this particular slide. I understand that, but I'm teaching a college course, and as such, I have to go based on what the book says. My personal beliefs are not going to be discussed here. It's not appropriate. But again, according to the slide, there are no absolute or indisputable rules or principles that can be developed to decide if an action is ethical or unethical. I personally disagree with that, with my own theological thoughts, but I'm not going to discuss that here. Neither laws nor ethics are fixed principles. The next slide, stakeholders and ethics. Stakeholders are the people and groups that supply a company with its productive resources and so have a claim on and a stake in the company. Types of company stakeholders, figure 4.1. You can look at them. Examples are employees, stockholders, managers, customers, community, society, and the nation state, and suppliers and distributors. What do stockholders want? The next slide. They want to ensure that managers are behaving ethically and not risking investors' capital by engaging in actions that could hurt the company's reputation. They want to maximize the return on investment. Managers, slide 1 of 2, responsible for using a company's financial capital and human resources to increase its performance. They have the right to expect a good return or reward by investing their human capital to improve a company's performance. They frequently juggle multiple interests. Slide 2 of 2. One problem has been that in many companies, corrupt managers focus not on building the company's capital and stockholders' wealth, but on maximizing their own personal capital and wealth. Ethics and nonprofit organizations. Over 80 nonprofits pay their top executives $1 million a year. Laws governing disclosures are far weaker for nonprofits. Many states and the federal government are considering new laws that would subject nonprofits to strict Sarbanes-Oxley type regulations that force the disclosure of issues related to managerial compensation and financial integrity. I'm fully for this. Just because you run a nonprofit doesn't mean that you're an ethical person, and sometimes you need to have that same oversight there as well. Employees expect to receive rewards consistent with their performance and effort. Companies can act ethically towards employees by creating an occupational structure that fairly and equitably rewards employees for their contributions. Suppliers and distributors. Suppliers expect to be paid fairly and promptly for their inputs. Distributors expect to receive quality products at agreed upon prices. Table 4.1, you can look at some principles from GAP's Code of Vendor Conduct. You can look at it at your own time. Customers, most critical stakeholder. Company must work to increase efficiency and effectiveness in order to create loyal customers and attract new ones. Community, society, and nation. The next slide, community, physical locations like towns or cities in which companies are located. Provides a company with the physical and social infrastructure that allows it to operate. A company contributes to the economy of the town or region through salaries, wages, and taxes. Figure 4.2 are 4 ethical rules. Utilitarian rule, we'll probably go through this a little more in depth. An ethical decision should produce the greatest good for the greatest number of people. In class, if you have me for an in-class discussion, we definitely have a major discussion about this. But since this slideshow video is really for online, we could probably discuss this in some other forum. Perhaps we can have some sort of live feed, or maybe we could put up some more discussion board questions and hear your input on it. Justice rule and ethical decisions should distribute benefits and harm among people in a fair, equitable, and impartial manner. Practical rule and ethical decision should be one that a manager has no hesitation about communicating to people outside the company, because the typical person in a society would think the decision is acceptable. And moral rights rule and ethical decision should maintain and protect fundamental rights and privileges of people. Practical decision model. Does my decision fall within the acceptable standards that apply in business today? Am I willing to see the decision communicated to all people and groups affected by it? Would the people with whom I have a significant personal relationship approve of the decision or not? Why should managers behave ethically? The relentless pursuit of self-interest can lead to a collective disaster when one or more people start to profit from being unethical, because this encourages other people to act in the same way. Figure 4.3, some effects of ethical and unethical behavior. You can look at it. Ethical behavior will lead to an increase of standard of living because everything is being done correctly. Of course, unethical behavior will lead to reduced national standard of living, all kinds of problems in society. You can read them for yourself. Trust and reputation, slide 1 of 2. Trust is the willingness of one person or group to have faith or confidence in the goodwill of another person, even though this puts them at risk. Slide 2 of 2. Reputation, esteem or high repute that individuals or organizations gain when they behave ethically. Figure 4.4 are the sources, the 4 sources of ethics: societal ethics, individual ethics, organizational ethics, and occupational ethics. Next slide. What are societal ethics? Standards that govern how members of a society should deal with one another in matters involving issues such as fairness, justice, poverty, and the rights of the individual. People behave ethically because they have internalized certain values, beliefs, and norms. Occupational ethics, standards that govern how members of a profession, trade, or craft should conduct themselves when performing work-related activities. Medical and legal ethics are examples of those. Table 4.2, some failures in professional ethics. Give you a couple of examples. Sales and marketing managers knowingly making unsubstantiated production claims. Human resource managers failing to act fairly, objectively, and in a uniform way towards different employees or kinds of employees because of personal factors such as personality and beliefs. Those are some examples in Table 4.2, a very, very important slide. Please look at it. Individual ethics. Personal standards and values that determine how people view their responsibilities to other people and groups, how they should act in situations when their own self-interests are at stake. Organizational ethics, guiding practices and beliefs through which a particular company and its managers view their responsibility toward their stakeholders. Top managers are especially important in shaping the organization's code of ethics. You have the next slide is the Johnson & Johnson Credo. I would suggest that you look at it. I will do my best to look for an appropriate video as well and try to post that. Social responsibility, the next slide, is the way a company, managers, and employees view their duty or obligation to make decisions that protect, enhance, and promote the welfare and well-being of stakeholders and society as a whole. TOMS is an example of that. Identify a need and then a product. TOMS operates by identifying a global need and creating a product that helps address it. It began when Blake Mycoskie, TOMS founder, was traveling in Argentina and found that many children had no shoes. In response, he established a company that donates a pair of shoes for every purchased pair of shoes. Table 4.3, forms of social responsible behavior. Managers are being socially responsible and showing their support for their stakeholders when they provide severance payments to those employees that are being laid off. Give workers opportunities to enhance their skills and acquire additional education so that they can remain productive and do not become obsolete because of changes in technology. Contribute to charities or support various civic-minded activities. Decide to keep open a factory even though it's not as profitable, because if closing that factory would create a devastating community experience where the community would fall apart. And that's really what happened in Detroit, where the automakers shut many of their factories, and as a result, many communities in Detroit fell apart. And you could look at some of the other examples in Table 4.3, forms of socially responsible behavior. Figure 4.6, approaches to social responsibility. They range from obstructionist all the way to your left, defensive, accommodative approach, and of course the proactive approach. 4 different approaches: Slide 1 of 4. Obstructionist approach. Companies and the managers choose not to behave in a socially responsible way and instead behave unethically and illegally. Defensive approach. Companies and their managers behave ethically to the degree that they stay within the law and strictly abide by legal requirements. Accommodative approach. Companies and their managers behave legally and ethically and try to balance the interests of different stakeholders as the need arises. Proactive approach. Companies and their managers actively embrace socially responsible behavior, going out of their way to learn about the needs of different stakeholders, groups, and using organizational resources to promote the interests of all stakeholders. Why be socially responsible? Demonstrating its social responsibility helps a company build a good reputation. And that is really where the bottom line today is looked at. Many people look at how companies behave, and as a result, they will either invest or divest. If all companies in society act socially responsible, the quality of life as a whole increases. The role of organizational culture. Ethical values and norms help organizational members resist self-interested actions, realize that they are a part of something bigger than themselves. Ethics, or an ethics ombudsman. These are individuals hired by organizations responsible for communicating ethical standards to all employees, designing systems to monitor employees' conformity to those standards, teaching managers and employees at all levels of the organization how to appropriately respond to ethical dilemmas. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful day.